how did we get here? How did we get to the point where the Liberal NDP government put in a punitive tax telling Canadians it was an environment plan, when we know now, through expert testimony and the behaviour of this Liberal Prime Minister, that this punitive carbon tax, which is driving up the cost of living, was never about environmental science. It was always about political science. And that is the pattern of behaviour we have seen over and over from this Prime Minister and the NDP, who continue to prop up this government and then practice hypocrisy in this House every single day in the chamber. Because the NDP prides itself on saying they stand up for the middle class, for the most vulnerable, and yet they prop up this Prime Minister who is making their life a living hell. This is not my opinion, Mr. Speaker. These are facts. Last week, Tiff Macklem, the Governor of the Bank of Canada, testified at the Finance Committee, and I want to read into the record some of this testimony. Mr. Tiff Macklem said, "First of all, it is the most vulnerable members of society that are suffering from the most high inflation. They are feeling the brunt of affordability more than everybody else. They can't just move down the market. They're already at the bottom of the market. Much of their spending is already on necessities. You can't cut back on that. That's why it is so important that we get inflation down. Inflation is a tax that disproportionately affects the most vulnerable members of society." Now, some people may want to argue that the carbon tax is not responsible for inflation or that it's not contributing to inflation. Well, let's correct that for the record as well, Mr. Speaker. This Prime Minister has tried to tell Canadians that repeatedly. But again, we know it's not true. Let me read into the record more testimony from the Governor of the Bank of Canada during Finance Committee last week. The member from Northumberland, Peterborough South, said, "Just to reiterate what you said there," he's referring to Mr. Macklem, "it would be 60 basis points or 0.6%, which currently the inflation rate is at 3.8%. That equates to almost 15% if I can do the math quickly." Mr. Tiff Macklem, "It would be 3.2. This testimony tells the story and the facts, and it proves the impact of carbon tax on Canadians. If it was removed today, tomorrow, inflation would go from 3.8% to 3.2%. Wow. That is significant. For people who don't know at home, that's 16% overall. Your mortgage, your interest rate, the cost of heating, the cost of groceries, all the things that you need, the necessities you need to live that are squeezing you out every month would go down. That is the impact of the carbon tax.